And what we're going to talk about is the creative side of business here. You've got really an unbelievable panel of experts to tell you how the business side of the entertainment industry really dictates what the creative side does. I spend probably much more time with our head of strategic planning than I do almost anybody else right now. And the way that that person in our industry, in my business, gives me advice and prods me and pushes me dictates the shows we make, the marketing we do, the audiences we go after. So without further ado, I will introduce you to Leerone Anolik, and she will take you through the panel.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you for that really kind introduction. I'm really excited to be here. This is my 4th year, but first time hosting. 3 years I was sitting in the crowd just like you guys. So, you know, there's a lot to look forward. I hope you really enjoy this day and get to talk to people and meet new faces and get some new connections and really take everything that you can out of this day. We have a really fun and exciting panel for you about the fun side of the media, the business side. It's not just all spreadsheets. So why don't I introduce our panelists here? We have Amit Shah, which is the VP of Finance and Strategy at A&E Networks. Doug Holloway, which is the President of Multi-Channel Distribution at Ion Media Networks. Jim Jones, VP of Education and Diversity Solution for the National Association for Multi-Ethnicity and Communications. Susan Malfa, a media industry professional recently with NBC Universal, Bravo, Oxygen, Sprout Media, and NBCU for Women. And just joined us, Julianne Evanina, VP of Digital Sales and Marketing at SiriusXM. So thank you all for being here today. So why don't we start with a little travel in time. So let's go back to college, and why don't you talk a little bit about what did you want to be when you grew up, and what was your first job out of college, and how did you end up where you are now?
Cool. Once again, I'd like to welcome everybody here. I actually had no idea what I wanted to do in college. I went and started off in a pre-med trajectory, I think, as Val mentioned earlier in the earlier panel. About a week before I took the MCAT, I decided, you know, I'm not as committed or passionate about medicine, so I decided to switch and did economics and political science, and ended up taking a job at JP Morgan doing investment banking for 2 years, because I figured I'm not really clear on exactly what I want to do longer term, but an entry-level professional services type of role would help me develop a skill set in analytics, presentation skills, research, and also working intense hours so that longer term I'd be prepared for anything. So that was sort of how I started off.
I'm also a fellow Columbia alum, business school, and I ended up there. I was at Emerson College studying television production. I wanted to be a director, producer, and I had a job at a radio station as a news writer at WEEI in Boston. And I went in, networked my way in to see the general manager one day, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I asked him for some career advice, and he said, "Well, you tell me what you want to do." And I said, well, he said, actually, what do you want to do in 20 years? Where do you want to be? And I didn't have a good answer for him. And so he said, well, think about it and then come back and talk to me. So I did, and I came back and I said, I want to be president of a television company. And you have to imagine, when I was 20 years old, there were only 3 television companies, CBS, NBC, and ABC, which is hard to imagine now, but that was the case. And so I changed my trajectory, and I decided I was going to apply to Columbia Business School, got in, and my first job out was at General Foods in marketing. Spent 2 years there, and then I ventured into the television business with CBS.
You need to know something about me. Can you hear me okay? It's really an act of real courage that I was able to turn the mic on. So, A, that's how technical I am. And you'll know that very quickly from my background. I was an English major at Harvard. Anybody here from Harvard? Hello. At any rate, I was an English major at Harvard, and I was doing a lot of singing in those days. And when I graduated, I went to Juilliard in the American Opera Center. Go figure. Got out of there. I was standing, didn't know what to do with myself. I was I looked very, very young. I was very insecure. I was certainly emotionally completely unintelligent. And I was standing literally at a kiosk one day buying a newspaper, and a man came up to me. This is New York City. A man came up to me. We are not a role model here, kiddos, on how to do it. And his name was Moses Gunn. Some of you who are older around may remember who Moses Gunn is. And he said to me, "Hey, young man, have you ever acted?" I said, "No, I'm at Juilliard." He said, "Oh, are you in the acting department?" "No, I'm an opera singer." He said, "Well, I'm doing a play on Broadway, and I think you'd be great for it." Short story, I went down, I auditioned, I got a role in a play on Broadway, go figure. And I quit Juilliard to go and do this. Of course, the play lasted about 20 minutes. You know how that works. But then it sort of threw me in a tizzy. What do I do with myself? I got a manager. I did stuff. I went out to Ohio. And I'll make this short, I promise. Whilst I was there to do it, guest artist, starring in a play out there at the Ohio, I don't know, Civic Theater, whatever it may have been. And someone asked me to sing, to give a concert at lunchtime. They knew I had sung, and I did. And it just so happened that someone was there from New York who heard me and said, "When you get back to New York, call me. You really should be back in opera." I got back in opera. I went back and got back to New York, went back and told my manager I'm quitting. She said, "You can't just walk out on the contract." I started to cry. She let me go. Quite literally. At any rate, I won a Fulbright. I went to Paris to study for a year. I ended up staying for about 5. At the end of that 5th year, I was doing a lot of singing, but I didn't have what you'd call a career. I thought, okay, you need to understand, you need to have a fall position. So I decided to go to business school. But I decided I'm going to go to a business school that was top tier. Why did I decide that? Because I knew I wouldn't get in. It was a death wish. I applied. I got into Columbia. They said, "Well, we'd like to put you on the waiting list because your calculus scores, your analytical scores are really, really low." I said, "I'm not going to go then." For whatever reason, they let me in again. Last Columbia story, the sort of rubber meets the road course in Columbia in the business school is something called managerial accounting. On the day of the exam, I turned in my blue book empty. It had my name. The professor looked at it, he said, "Mr. Jones, there's nothing here." I said, "Which is the sum total of what I've learned in your class. Bye." I walked out, fully thinking I was going to go back and sing more opera, but somehow they let me come back for a second term, and I managed to get through that. Even then, I thought, well, I'm going to put this little degree, this MBA, in my back pocket and go back on the stage. Well, there's something called student loans. Well, that meant I had to go to work and get a job to pay off those student loans, and the rest is history. Here I am. Thank you.
That's an incredible story. Mine is not that amusing. Evan said this before, and I think while this is an advice tip, it also goes back to when it all started, but use the people around you. That's all I can say, because I felt that in retrospect, I didn't really tap into my network or resources, including guidance counselors at school, whether that be high school or college. But I did know that I liked art, and I went to school for art. So I have a BA, and I also minored in economics and business, which was my hedge. Got out of school, didn't really know that the business side of the art business, which is the graphics end of the business, really required a portfolio, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, I got into the advertising business, but in the account management side of the business. So sort of a good bridge between right and left brain, meaning that you have to understand the creative, but you have to sell it through to the client. I was in that industry for 10-ish years, and then my mentor, which I didn't realize she was a mentor at the time, suggested that for women, a really great career path would be sales. And she had introduced me to a number of sales women or sales leaders, which were mostly in the print industry. And it seemed interesting to me, but a little scary. And when I thought about it, I had been selling ideas to our clients, representing those on behalf of the agency. So why would it be that difficult to transition into a literal sales role? I wound up, my first sales job was at the Travel Channel, and then I was in many great startup cable networks, from Travel to Food Network. Then I worked at Comedy Central. I think, Val, I might have been there when you were there. Then was at Comedy for about 10 years, went over to sort of reposition TV, Court TV, sorry. It changed to True TV. And then went over to Bravo, which is part of the NBC Universal portfolio. Then under my purview, I got Oxygen and Sprout Network and Style, and launched a cross-portfolio, meaning selling all the assets in the portfolio, women at NBCU, which was a way at getting at targeting, which sort of was a little bit before its time in the targeting for digital. Anyway, what I will say is it's a long journey, and you really don't know where it's going, but being open and flexible and using the people around you, I would say, is a way to go.
Hi, I'm Julianne Evanina at SiriusXM Radio. Thanks all for being here. So when I do my time travel, like many of the folks here with me today and the panel this morning, it was a long, winding road. So my undergraduate was spent at Barnard College up the street in the Columbia family, and I was a dance major. And I was planning to dance professionally, but I wanted a liberal arts education, so I said Barnard is the perfect marriage of the two. In my junior year, I broke my foot at the Cunningham studio and said, maybe what I need is a job with health insurance. So I said, okay, well, I'll go into arts administration. That'll be perfect. I can still be in the arts, and I can dance, and it'll be kind of 9 to 5, and that'll be great. Between my junior and senior year, I interned at AOL down in Washington, D.C. So I graduated, I started interviewing, and AOL was just opening their New York office. So I said, are you guys interested in a temp? I'm looking for jobs, but I could work for you in the meantime. And they said, oh, great, you know our proprietary stuff, perfect. We had about 10 people in the office here down on 22nd Street, and I started temping at AOL. I was interviewing for jobs. I used all my connections, so one piece of advice, use every connection. I was a babysitter, and the people I babysat for introduced me to people that that I interviewed for. So, you know, your network is so broad. It's not just your professional network. It's people who know you, who can attest for your work ethic and know how creative and smart you are, and that's how you get connections. So I got a few job offers and went into AOL to say, hey, this is my 2 weeks. I got a job. And they said, oh, well, we didn't know you wanted a job. We'll give you a job. And I said, really? And they said, yeah, do you want to be an editor or an interactive media developer? Just let us know in about 5 minutes. I said, sure, I just finished college, I'm sick of writing, I'll be an interactive media developer. I had no idea what that was. So then this goes to the earlier theme of fake it till you make it. So then I needed to learn how to write code. And I started writing code. And you just figure it out along the way. And I did that for about 3 years. And I said, at some point in this career, but I got to work with a lot of creative people. I learned Photoshop. I was creating images. Like, this is cool. I get to do a little bit of everything. Then they said, well, we need someone to give a presentation to the marketing department. So you're the only developer that we would send in there. So they sent me to talk to the marketing department. 2 months later, the marketing department called and said, hey, do you want to work in marketing? I said, no. And they said, just think about it. And I ended up, they needed a more technical advisor, and I moved into marketing. And then from there, I moved into direct sales and marketing, managing finance budgets and media spend, creating media assets, media plans. And then from AOL, I moved to a couple financial services companies, thinking, well, marketing is marketing. And then I learned, no, it actually matters what you're selling. You really need to care about the product. And I knew that media was where my heart was. And so at that point, I went to XM Radio at the time, worked with Gary Hahn, who you met this morning, and XM merged with Sirius XM. And now I spend 2 days a week in New York City. I'm based in our Washington, D.C. office and manage all of our digital sales and marketing and acquisition. So it's a long, curvy road, and work all of your connections, and people hire winners. So my advice would be become an expert in something, be excellent at that, and your colleagues and everyone in your company will recognize that, and they will want to bring you on your team. The new skills, new businesses, you're smart, you can learn that in a second. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So I think one of the things you probably noticed, and a common theme in everyone's stories, is that there's really no common theme, right? There's no perfect background. You really can do anything in the media industry as long as you have the passion and the drive, and you kind of pick up the right set of skills and talk to the right people. And hopefully this is encouraging for everyone. So I know that when I spent time in business school, I really try to figure out, what am I good at, and what am I not good at, and I want to learn more of, and where would I be a good fit, and what kind of role is really good for me. So can you guys talk a little bit about the skills, that you use in your day-to-day, and maybe give the students some examples of projects that you've worked on or how you actually apply those skills in your jobs?
Well, I can start off. I think I stopped my story early where I ended in investment banking, but I also, after that, I did Teach for America for a couple of years. So I had sort of a variety of different experiences. And then when I went to business school, I was looking for an industry I was going to be passionate about that sort of combined skills where you have you can utilize sort of the business mindset and then also sort of the people skills. And I think that's really important on a day-to-day basis is, you're working with a variety of different people from a variety of backgrounds and experiences and in various different parts of the business, and knowing how to sort of be able to leverage and learn from a lot of these people is something that I really cherish on a day-to-day basis in my job, because I think never stop growing and learning in whatever positions that you're in. I think it's really important to understand holistically how our businesses work. And so no matter what role you're in, I think everything is really, really interconnected. And that's one of the things I've seen on a day-to-day basis in my job is that increasingly you have to have an understanding of programming, marketing, ad sales, affiliate to really understand the direction that the company is going in. So it's having that passion for learning as much as you can about all parts of the business, and then also learning from other people as well.
I couldn't agree more. Because everything's changing right now, and I would say not only our industry, but every industry, I think, it's sort of fair game, where every marketplace is going, and the people part of our jobs, listening to and respecting what other people have to say, because we all need to learn from each other. No one piece of the industry or one person is going to solve the dramatic tectonic shifts that are going on right now. And I would say, really, when you strip it all down, where all the ideas and the products come from anyway are the people. So the people are the heart of everything. They are the business, and you have to listen to each other. I have been fortunate in my work career to have been in several situations or at several groups of people where the underpinning was largely respect and the willingness to listen to each other and debate, and the output of that was remarkable success. So I would say people above everything. Listen, respect, ask a lot of questions. The outcome will come.
I studied journalism at Northeastern. I studied television production and radio at Immersion. And my MBA is in marketing and finance. And so I use all those skills that I've learned. Along the way, I worked in General Foods and consumer marketing. I worked at CBS in finance and strategic planning. And then I ultimately ended up in affiliate relations at CBS Cable. which is a now long ago defunct cable network, but one of the early cable networks. And along the way, I use marketing, finance, my production knowledge, new technologies. I've been involved with USA Network. I worked at NBC. I was one of the creators of the Sci-Fi Channel. And so all of my skills, everything, I became really a generalist. That was my goal, to know everything about business and as it relates to the television industry. And so I've had to use all of those skills on a regular basis. I also was on the board of A&E Networks, National Geographic International, and when I was part of Nat Geo. We were one of the first companies to launch mobile video in Eastern Europe and Asia. And so I've gotten an opportunity to work in all sides of the business and constantly draw back on past experiences.
I think I've come at it from a slightly different place, as you can probably well imagine. And I think if there's been a life lesson that I can share with you, it's around a couple of things. A, it's less about being strategic. Clearly, there was nothing strategic in my background, but it is about being intentional, and maybe I learned that the hard way. So think less about these long sort of arcs of careers you're going to have, and think about what you're doing, the steps you're taking, and the courage that it's going to take to take that step and stand there with some real authenticity. And the other piece, and I come from the people development side of the industry, well, that's what I do essentially, is it's around knowing yourself. So the only way you can know others and respect them and have a sense of their worth is to have a real sense of who you are, what you bring to the table. And that takes work. And incidentally, there is no, as they say, there. But it really takes, again, this word intentionality around finding those whom you respect, whom you trust, to give you feedback, particularly about the hard stuff, who are going to tell you the truth about how you're showing up. Listen to it and do something about it. We all have blind spots. We all have areas that we're not aware of, which may be hindering our ability to grow at a greater pace, to be as powerful as clearly everyone in this sitting out there can be. It's incredibly important that you have this in your life. Call it mentorship, call it coach, call it whatever it will be. It really is incredibly important, and perhaps the most important tool you can have in your careers. And the other piece, and this is going to be a little aggressive, is don't drink the Kool-Aid about being a millennial and all of that. You do bring special gifts and insights, but there's no such thing as a free pass. You've got to show up and be powerful and be incredible and be strong and be courageous and produce so that at 5 o'clock on Friday, your product is as good as someone who's a baby boomer or whomever else. All the rest, take it for what it is, understand it, but then put it in some context of excellence.
So I would echo all of the themes that you've already heard. Obviously, for me, the skill set is a combination of your specific technical skills that you need for that job. So along the way for me, when I was in marketing, I said, I need to go back to school and get my MBA because I need to round out my education. You know, my dance degree wasn't helping me in my finance conversation, so I decided to supplant it with that. But it also is about the personal relationships and understanding what you need to manage those both within your organization and across organizations. I guess my other point would be that, you know, I see that luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And you hear a lot of, oh, I was lucky. Well, you were lucky in that you got an opportunity, but your preparedness and follow through on it is what made you successful in that.
So I want to follow up with something that Jim mentioned. Jim mentioned, you know, finding a mentor or coach or someone that can help you through and kind of have someone to look up to. So how would these students go about finding that person?
Okay, I could talk a little bit about my experience. Having been in sort of two different industries before entering the media world, I think it's very, very important to really get out there and put yourself out there in ways to reach out to alumni from your schools, to reach out with other people in your network that can really help you understand the industry, the various different types of roles that are available. I mean, I spent some time in business school. Literally over spring break, I flew out to LA, started crashing on people's couches, rented a car, and emailed people who would be willing to take the time to just spend some time for coffee or lunch or whatever to be able to understand their backgrounds and any advice that they would have. And I think the approach I took was not necessarily like, hey, I'm looking for an internship or a job, but it was more so about learning more about other people's paths and the advice and the insights that they could provide for someone like me who hadn't been in the industry, wasn't as knowledgeable about what was the trends that were going on and also the different types of roles that would be a good fit for me. So I think that was sort of the first step. And then once you're actually, have had an opportunity to have those meetings, to really follow up. And it's not necessarily you have to follow up every week, every month or something, but just sort of staying in touch. I really valued your insights. Here's sort of some progress that I've been able to make in terms of where I'm heading, what I'm thinking about. Just little things like that to keep in touch with people are really important. And then finally, I think it would be selecting a few of the people out of that group that have had the most influence to really continue to sort of develop a relationship going forward. And it may not be 3 people that have the same backgrounds. It would be other people that I think would help complement sort of the skill sets that maybe you want to strengthen or other areas that you may not know too much about.
Yeah, there's no substitution for networking and getting involved. When I entered the cable business, excuse me, actually the television business, it was very, very different than it is now. And I learned in college that a good way to get to know people was to get involved in organizations. And I got mentors early on in the television business because I was at the start of NAMIC. So I'm one of the group of people that put together NAMIC. And I was a young upstart, and all of the other folks were considerably older and more experienced than I was. But I was very eager and very accommodating. So with that, the start of the organization Jim works for, I got mentored. And a lot of people took me under their wing and really shepherded me through my career. And in addition to being involved in NAMIC, I've been involved in CTAM, which is another cable organization for marketing. I was chairman. I networked my way through there and became involved in everything I could within the television business, and have picked up a number of mentors along the way. But more important than mentoring is you have to position yourself to get a sponsor. The sponsor makes all the difference in the world in your career. And I was very, very fortunate that I got a sponsor when I worked for USA Network. And a sponsor is someone who is more senior than you that can actually dictate or move you through your career. They can hire you, they can fire you, they can promote you, they can pay you. And I was very lucky that the founder of USA Network picked me up as a sponsor, as my sponsor, and shepherded me for the last 26 years through my career. As a matter of fact, I'm at ION right now because she was on the board of ION and brought me over.
Shameless plug time. Join NAMIC, girls and boys. We'll find you a mentor.
I was going to say, I agree with all the advice so far. And yes, there are many organizations within the industry, including Advertising Women of New York, that has a mentoring program. Lots of ways of doing that. And one other thing that I just heard from somebody recently, which I think is brilliant, it's like create your own board of directors, which is similar to what you were saying. Collect people or think about people who can help you in different areas and as a balance, and you can be chairman of your own board, but you have a collection of your go-to people for all sorts of advice and direction. So I thought that was great.
Yes, likewise, look at both your formal mentors and your informal mentors. And some of your mentors aren't people that you recognize today are your mentors. So it's asking for feedback from all different places and settings and taking that in. The hardest feedback, which is may come off negative, is going to be the most constructive because we all have those blind spots. So taking that in, but also distinguishing a mentor from a sponsor is a critical point. So finding someone within your organization that can advocate for you, which is different than giving you feedback.
Yep, and I might add that you don't know who someone is that becomes your sponsor. Generally, they don't tell you. You may find out over a period of time, but sponsors you can't search for. Sponsors pick you. And I will say that through my involvement with NAMIC and CTAM and other organizations in the industry, I've mentored a number of people and have gone on to hire them as well as sponsor some of them through the industry and move their careers. Matter of fact, the person that works for me now, I have sponsored for over 20 years. We've had a relationship. And she's worked for me through various different companies.
May I add one more thing just to the networking? If you look at your network and sit down and think about that, and it includes people who look like you, and only people who look like you and think like you and have come from your same sort of cultural context, it's not going to work for you, kiddos. Be courageous, reach across those comfort levels, and that's a part of understanding yourself and getting to being courageous enough to show up with someone who's very, very different from you and see what can be, what that synergy can be all about. And it takes work, and it takes a lot of courage, and there may be some bumping your nose up against somebody else's cultural wall, but it's so worth it in the end.
And on the courage, people are flattered when you ask for their opinion. So it may seem difficult to reach out, but it's a coffee meeting, and they're flattered. They want to participate, so you'll find that that's the hardest part.
Yeah, and I really agree with that last point. I would just add to that while you're in school, it's really easy to reach out to people, right? Because you're a student, you just want to learn more. People love that. People love talking about themselves as well, right? So I don't remember how many emails I sent out to people while my 2 years at school, just asking them for a phone call, a cup of coffee, anything. I would go anywhere in town, even if it was on the east side, and really just spend time with anyone that you can. Some people you'll only meet once and you'll never talk to them again. Some people you'll find that there's like this immediate click and you'll just keep coming back to them and you'll keep talking to them every few months or once a year. And it's out of those relationships that you'll really find those mentors and sponsors. So I want to go back to something that Susan mentioned before. Susan, you mentioned, and we've heard that in the panel before us, that this industry, and not just this industry, but the world today is really going through this enormous change with all the technology. What are some of the recent, the new jobs that you've seen develop in recent years, and where do you see opportunities for new grads?
I mean, data seems to be the big one, although I know that's sort of an elusive, big, scary word. I actually think it's defining itself right now. There's just so much information out there. I think the biggest challenge for any business, I mean, even retailers, how much information do you really need? What are you trying to accomplish? And sort of boil it down. It's sort of the analysis paralysis. I think we're in a little bit of that, but definitely a growth area and an area that people are expanding on. It's all about targeting and being more efficient, about how to make connections between people and products and other things as well. But definitely data and analytics. And, in our industry, in the entertainment business, it's still, great creative content is still the thing that people want. And, there's a lot of stuff out there on a lot of different platforms. I think that part of our business will continue to grow. It's just sorting out where are the best places to do that and who's going to succeed at doing that in a scalable way, sustainable, scalable way.
I would also say mobile, cloud computing, cloud applications for video, broadband applications for video and data, but go mobile.
And I would say within digital, obviously a plug for my industry, but the real business need in digital is understanding the contribution to your business. So to the extent that you can bring something to an organization that says, here's how this will contribute to the overall goals and the bottom line of the company, that is the missing link. Saying I'm an expert in social media, that's great, but can you be an expert in social media in a way that delivers value, and better yet, delivers value in a way that we haven't seen yet? So translating it and taking it back to, so what does it mean to me being the business?
So I have a little story about Doug. He probably doesn't remember this, but when I participated in my first one-day immersion, there was a session with mock interviews where you were able to get 10 minutes with an exec and he just mock interviewed you. And Doug was my interviewer, and I was terrified. But it was a great experience, because it's always good to be asked those questions in an interview when you're not actually, there isn't really a job on the line. So my question to you guys is, what do you look for in a new hire, a junior hire, fresh out of college? What are some of the questions that you ask, or what does that interview really need to do for you to say, I'm hiring him today?
I think there's several things that I look for, and I've been through a couple of hiring processes recently, and I think a lot of it boils down to sort of the passion that you show for the industry and for the type of role that you want, and that has to really come across in the interview. I think a second piece is really coming in and doing your homework. I think that's really important. A part of the passion is really understanding what are some of the trends that are going on in the industry, having a sense of the company that you're going to be you're interviewing with. I think it's also important to be able to engage and have a perspective. So if somebody asks you about what do you think about how Netflix is changing the industry, it may not necessarily be the right answer, but just having a perspective is really, really important as well. So I think those are just a couple things, I think, that are important.
Well, I didn't intentionally terrify you, did I? I hope not.
Terrified.
Well, you did well. I look for passion as well. I look for a sparkle in your eye. I look for your commitment. I look for intelligence, people that have done their homework, somebody that can talk easily, communicate, I think is really important. I look for somebody that has a pleasing personality. I don't like to work with people that are grouchy.
I think I want to, again, understand your work style when you're going into interview, please, and that really takes some work. And I'm not speaking of just the bromides around. I like people, but really understand how you work best, the type of culture in which you work best, and be prepared to ask the question or address the issue. If you're not in that kind of culture, how do you flex?
I agree with the passion piece, but I would say it as enthusiasm. I think it's very difficult for people to, coming out of college, unless you're, one of the few handful of people who are very clear on what exactly they love and want to do. But enthusiasm, definitely ask questions, know a bit about that company. A good old smile, confidence, which I think confidence is a summation of all the things I just rattled off. But, we all have hard jobs to do. Every single one of our companies lives in a challenging economic time, and we want somebody who's going to roll up their sleeves and just dive into the job, raise their hand, take on projects, do good work, high caliber work. So those are the kinds of things I look for.
So along those lines, I'd be looking for someone who's demonstrated follow-through and the ability to do the hard work. So bringing examples of whether it's a specific school project or one of your extracurriculars, but how you've been able to bring something through to fruition. So I expect you're going to be eager and happy and smart and pleasant, but how can you demonstrate that I can trust you to give you a project and you'll see it all the way through?
So I think we're running out of time. So I want to thank all of our panelists today. This was great. I hope you enjoyed it. And just for you students, just go out and network the hell out of it and just shine.